It's taken me until day 3 of Streaming Media Connect to realize that the way we should reward the Amazon gift card is to the first person who can ID the intro music that our producer, Steve Nathans Kelly, uses. If you know what that was, pop it in the chat. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen. I am the conference chair for all of Streaming Media's events. I'm also the CMO of a startup out of the UK called Ideas. Welcome back to day 3 of Streaming Media Connect. It's great to be able to do this both virtually and in person now. We'll be doing it in person again in November in Huntington Beach with Streaming Media West. The program for that is online now. So go ahead and check that out at the link that Steve pops in the chat. Also, if you're interested in speaking at Streaming Media West, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. A few housekeeping notes before we jump into this panel. As I hinted at earlier, just for being here, you're entered into a drawing to win an Amazon gift card. The trick is you have to be present to win. So that's the other thing. If you ID the intro music and you have to be present to win at the end, then we can guarantee you're here for the whole thing. So watch for that at the end of our session. If you do have questions for our panel, please put them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom window rather than in the chat. That just makes it easier for us to keep track of them. Evan, our moderator, will be keeping an eye on the Q&A and grab questions from the audience where appropriate or at the end of the panel. Also, subtitles are turned on. If you see them on your screen and you don't want to or need to see them on your screen, they are at, you can go to the bottom of your screen where it says live transcript, click on that, and then select a disable transcript. Finally, all of these sessions from Streaming Media Connect will be available on demand starting on Monday at our YouTube channel. And once again, Steve is there with the link in the chat very soon. I'd like to thank our diamond sponsor, Media Silo. They've made it possible for us to bring you this whole 3 days worth of sessions for Streaming Media Connect. And as always, we really appreciate your support. And here's a video message from Media Silo. We've got another great topic this hour, and it's a topic that we touched on in a panel that our moderator was on Tuesday, but we're going to dive into talking about monetization, in particular, the latest, greatest, and most important and most challenging issues surrounding monetizing video content in the context of all of the content and all the services that people are subscribing to these days. And we couldn't have a better moderator to talk about that. It's someone that anyone who's familiar with the media space will be familiar with. So let me welcome Evan Shapiro, who's going to introduce our panelists. Evan, welcome.
Thanks so much, Eric. Great to be here today. Thanks for having me back. This is a great panel. Let's jump right into it. Let's start with Dr. Dina Ibrahim. She's a professor of, is a nice title, Broadcast and Electronic Communication Arts at San Francisco State University. She's worked with BBC World Service Radio, UPI, CNN, NPR. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, thank you.
Dr. Dina, is that what I refer to you as?
Sure.
Next, I'm going to go to John Giegengack, the funnest name to say. He comes to us he's the founder and principal of Hub Entertainment Research, one of the great research insight firms that provides us information about the convergence of technology and entertainment. And we're going to be referring to some of your slides that I stole from you, if that's okay. And then let's go to Darcy Lorincz. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Barrett-Jackson Auction Company, founder of Origin Digital. They are pioneers and leaders in the live streaming and OT&T and digital space.
Good morning.
Welcome, Darcy, coming to us from a nice, cool, dark room on a hot summer day. And then lastly, but not leastly, Mike Richter, who leads global CTV and digital revenue now at the Trusted Media Brands. Was Jukin Media. They were recently acquired. And now Mike runs revenue across all the properties that company has. And we'll get into that in a second. I did want to start with these slides, which I stole from John, that highlight the difficulties of monetization right now. I think, in the early days, it was just advertising on broadcast, and this is both radio and TV, and then it turned into a dual revenue stream of subscriptions and advertising, and then everything melted down. And we are now in a direct-to-consumer subscription economy, which, as Netflix has proved earlier this year, is not the easiest business to succeed in long term. John, you want to just tell us what this slide tells us really quickly?
Sure. Yeah. So we asked people to estimate. We asked them two questions. We said, estimate what you spend on TV overall. And then we said, tell us what's a reasonable amount for someone like you to spend on TV overall. And so the big takeaway here is not necessarily the numbers themselves, because people aren't very good at estimating exactly what they spend on things. And especially as the marketplace gets more crowded, their ability to sort of accurately give you a number degrades a little more. But I think the big thing is that the amount that they feel that is reasonable has not changed that much, but the amount that they think they're spending has gone down. And so the gap is smaller, but it shows that people, this is one of a number of pieces of data we have to show that people are taking advantage of this more diverse TV marketplace to pick and choose things that they really get some value out of and get their spending down closer to what they feel they ought to be spending, and spend less on stuff that they don't watch.
And based on the data that you've seen, I'm going to turn this to Mike really quickly. Is part of this like just free stuff now? Like we're replacing some of the stuff we used to pay for with FAST and AVOD, or is this something else?
I think it's a combination of things. One, it's funny looking at these numbers because it makes me think, should I go look at my subscription services that I subscribe to? And when I think about adding them all up, I'm sure I'm way above the 68 or the 82 or even the $94 level. But regardless, when it comes down to it, we were talking about this earlier, people pay for content one of two ways: with money or with time, or with a combination of both. Now, before, in a cable-based world, primarily cable-based world, you were paying with both. You were paying both subscription and significant amounts of advertising. I'm wondering too if there's a way to do this study and looking at and measure the amount of time people are watching advertising. If anything, maybe that's better balanced now, because we've reduced the average number of ad breaks in a FAST and AVOD environment, average number of length of time in those environments as well.
We do ask that, and you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And also this isn't in here, but so these are the must-have categories of content. Big brand SVODs, which I think are obvious: Netflix, Prime, Apple TV. Actually, Apple TV Plus doesn't qualify in there, do they?
In the technical definition for this question, they do, just because we did but they qualify as we did a regression to see which ones are the big brands, and the regression came up with exactly the list of the ones you would think, plus Apple TV Plus.
So they are listed as must have. So are social media, and then you can see reading, streaming music, and then the cable coming in last place, but still a pretty high number here. But to Mike's point from earlier, you did some surveying around how satisfied users are of these different services, and the people who watch the ad, like the HBO Max with ads versus the HBO Max without ads, and SVODs with ads, which I call SAVOD, subscription advertising supported video on demand, hashtag SAVOD. They are just as satisfied as the people who are watching without ads. Is that your sense, or did I read that data correctly?
Yeah, in some, it's really interesting because there's not a massive difference between the two, but for some platforms like HBO Max, the people that watch the ad-free version, satisfaction is a little higher than those that watch the ad-supported. But for ones like Discovery, it's the other way around. So the takeaway, if you aggregate across all of them, is that tolerance for ads is a lot higher than maybe many people expected. And to Mike's point, as the ad experience gets better and people are stacking more and paying for more subscriptions, the willingness to use ad-supported platforms is getting higher and higher.
You know
And
what's
I think-
also interesting to that point too is
Go ahead, Mike.
when looking at the data. I've been looking at this research for years now. When we were building up Premion, we were trying to look at how much do people want to watch ads? Because if we remember back when CTV was, we called it OTT, when that was taking off, everyone was thinking they wanted to eliminate advertisements, and that was what we wanted to get rid of. But all of the studies done then mirror the studies that are being done now. People expect to pay for their content with time. They're expecting to see advertisements. They just don't want it to be abused. They don't want it to be overwhelming. Now, that's going to lead to a whole nother topic of worms to uncover here is we would think that, hey, we're going to be reducing the amount of advertising time in theory, as you've been tracking, which means that should be technically more valuable than what you're seeing in a linear-based environment or video environments. But what we've not solved yet is a consistent centralized measurement, exchange. And that's the missing aspect of value. The expectation is we should see an increase in value, but it's hard to justify that. And that's what we need to solve for next.
And then when you look at this, what was surprising to me on this slide was that that FAST, so free ad supported streaming television. And I think you can conflate AVOD and FAST into that. In fact, I suggest we combine them into just calling it all FAST, whether it's on demand or linear. But this gets to something, Darcy and Dina, that you wanted to talk about, which is, I think between the FAST and the AVODs out there, there's also this live streaming aspect of it that I think is maybe the Twitches of the world, and YouTube lives, and all of that content. I mean, you're talking about billions of hours of content every quarter on Twitch and YouTube Live and Instagram Live and all these other places that I think is, it's free. Somebody's making money off of it, I think. But they seem to be as desired and as must have to certain consumers, depending on who they are. Is that your experience? I mean, I think Dina, you have a lot more experience.
Yeah,
on Twitch.
I do have a lot to say about Twitch. I work with a lot of sort of 13 to 25-ish demographic, teaching at SF State, and working with a lot of independent content creators, people who want to monetize via micro donations. And they are taking advertising via developing sponsorship deals. So, I think there's a lot that traditional or premium channels can learn from that. So if they have a show, if they have, stars on that show, if they want to make additional revenue, they really should be tapping into Twitch, which does have a massive audience. And another opportunity with Twitch and YouTube Live and Instagram is merchandising as well. So, you're seeing a lot of even younger kids, I would say like 9 to 13, really wanting to spend money on merchandise related to shows as well. YouTuber merch, big growing market. When you look at the audience, I tend to look at younger audiences to see where those trends are going to lead us. They're not making the purchasing decisions per se in terms of subscriptions, but I do think that Twitch and YouTube Live are offering a lot there. And then also from a parent perspective, I want to mention YouTube Premium. And just as a parent being able to control the amount of advertising.
That's not YouTube TV. That's not YouTube TV. That's not YouTube TV. That is the premium version.
Correct.
Of the VOD, basically.
Premium version of the VOD. I don't want my kid asking for Doritos every other day because he's being inundated, right?
We
need a class in school to educate how many different service names there are, so we know what we're.
I teach a class on just deciphering all that stuff, but that does go to something the creator economy end of things. I mean, podcasts. Look how high and a must-have podcast is, and I think this gets down to the more specific a channel is, forgetting where they get it. The more specific a channel is. So I like this artist. And people are either on Twitch, they're making donations or tips. On pods, they're often subscribing via Patreon, which is one of the bigger creator economy. Basically, it's a bespoke subscription platform for creators. Darcy, I'm interested in, the business model that I mean, we've talked about live auctions and live streaming. When you look at this slide, what runs through your head, and where do you see the white space here, or the green shoots for folks out there who are looking to find ways to monetize their content? Your mic's off right now. Darcy, your mic's off. Can I turn it?
Every minute of video for us that's on air is an opportunity to sell something. Obviously, automobiles is our primary objective, but surrounding that are all the other things that go with that: the accessories, the merchandise, all those pieces of revenue that you can surround a live event. And we look at ourselves not much differently than a gaming platform or a live sports platform, where you have to engage this digital native in something interesting that's not just what we expect them to lean back and experience. They want to be part of it. They want to be in it. And of course, if they're in the creator side of it, they want to monetize it. And you've got to have those tools embedded in your platform like Twitch does, to really let them continue to not only experience and monetize, but to reach the audience, in ways that it creates the opportunity and the revenue for them and for the network that they're on. So for us, we have to look at all those things, look at it from a fan engagement perspective, and provide the tools not only to monetize, but to engage that audience. And those 3 billion plus gamers that are out there are expecting a lot of different things than you'd expect from just watching television.
Yeah,
or live streaming.
I think gaming, people think, oh, gaming is for just young boys, and it's not. I mean, it's 3 billion people, almost half the world's population, game. And when you think about things like Candy Crush and all these other what they call casual games on phones, that isn't a young male demographic. That's actually a very heavily female demographic. But I think what Darcy and Dina both brought up, and John and Mike, I'm interested in, when you look at this, especially as you go down this list and you look at the kind of peak of passion around these things, it's not about the scale of the audience. It's not about the size of the audience. It's about the depth of the passion, right?
Can you make an influence? Can you influence them to make a decision about something? We're starting to see some really interesting things in the space. I think the concept of it's not even microtransactions, it's micro engagement, it's micro audience, if you think about it. And when you have massive amounts of micro audiences, and those audiences are more likely to be higher engaged with the content that they're watching, they're more likely to be influenced by the content they're watching. Publishers out there have figured out the key to being a successful publisher is you do not have to be everything to everyone,
right? Or
you don't have to be something to everyone. You need to be everything to someone. And if you flip that, because so many times everybody tries, especially content owners, we try to diversify our offerings so much, you start to lose the essence of who you are.
Well, and there's a difference between diversifying your offering and diversifying your revenues. That's what Dina was kind of saying. It's like, find your cult, right? So John was talking about Crunchyroll earlier, which has a very low churn, a very high engagement, and not that many subscribers. They have, I think, around 2 to 3, maybe 4 million paying subscribers, and then a ton of free users. But boy, oh boy, you can't separate that crowd from that content. They are dedicated to it.
Funny, one of the first times I heard that statement that I used in the wild was at an event where Crunchyroll was talking about their success. And when they pivoted from trying to be something to everyone, they decided to be everything to someone, and it made a huge difference. But then you see some other interesting shifts too, to what Dina was talking about from an affiliate marketing perspective. If anybody is paying attention to the recent update Google just put out to search, that I think came out today or yesterday, it's targeted to really targeting a lot of the sites that are creating search-based content, and a lot of that is focused on affiliate marketing. So as those take hits, because a lot of them are it's going to lead to affiliate marketers looking towards places that aren't taking hits, and that's going to be a lot of these micro audiences focused with their influencers on places like Instagram and even Twitch.
Let me take a break here. Whoever has sound in their background, could you turn off your mic just when you're not talking? Go ahead, Dina, you were going to make a point.
I was just going to build on that in terms of the affiliate marketing, but also looking at ESPN Plus and sports. And
Right. Thank you for doing that.
then we've got somebody in the Q&A talking about live sports streaming and micro wagering. And then I also want to tie it into the super fan. Again, from a college perspective, college sports, they're ridiculous. And so again, another major market out there for revenue.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this. So ESPN, nothing on this chart surprised me as much as ESPN being number 2 as far as a must-have goes, because they have about 18 million subscribers, and yet obviously they're just rabid. Jennifer Kent, who was on a panel with me in this conference earlier in the week, she shared a slide that showed that 31% of consumers in the United States have a sports subscription, which is the same number we always said, well, only 31% of the cable universe watches ESPN, and yet everybody's paying for it. That's not fair. Well, guess what? That same percentage showed up in streaming. And to your point from earlier, when you look at the depth of passion around sports, it's not just college, it's also high school. Mm-hmm. And the deeper the connection between the consumer and what they're watching, the more they're going to be willing to pay for it. You mentioned, people paying 50 cents a dollar to watch their niece or nephew play, lacrosse or field hockey across the country. What about kids in high school plays and musicals? There's actually a service out there that you can buy a ticket to your granddaughter or grandson's high school play and watch it live as it's happening. Are we moving towards these kind of, and I throw this open to the panel, are we moving towards these cult-based economies? Are those the ones? Go ahead.
I mean, like, newsflash, humans act on emotion. We are naturally emotional creatures. As much as we try to remove emotion from everything in our daily lives, from business to logic, everything is still emotionally biased. And it is based on the perception of who you are. So if you can evoke emotion in an action, it's going to make that action even more predictable. Now, and when you think about too, like, ESPN truly doesn't surprise me, because all the research done about when we were talking about the great wave of cable cancellation, the number 1 and number 2 reasons for people not canceling cable yet was access to local content and access to sports. That was it. And local content, I think, is actually behind that of sports. Like, sports was number 1, which took
up. Sports is also local. I think that's another thing that people don't necessarily
sports
understand.
Is local. Yes, sports is local. I agree with you on that. But the majority of sports, the reason you needed your localized cable subscription to that point too, even nationalized sports have blackout issues. Right, so you can solve for that in a personalized subscription service like ESPN Plus. That was the biggest game changer. And that's what's moving people more and more away from a MVP.
Again, if you look at this slide, take Netflix out of it, everything else comes down to some sort of real. I mean, Spotify is the standout here because they are the only music service that pops up onto this list. Mm-hmm. And the only time I'm aware of that they had any churn issues is when Joe Rogan went rogue. Went Rogan.
I wouldn't say that this is new. Sports has always driven the demand. I don't care if it's linear, streaming, anything. It's always been at the top along with news, because it's rare. And if you're a fan, you're going to go where you need to go to watch what you need to watch, whether it's that niche local stuff or national or regional or even international. I go back to Red Bull days. Action sports wasn't a thing, and all of a sudden it popped up and everybody could watch it. It wasn't on television, it was streamed. Same thing happened with international sports that were trying to find expats in different parts of the world, and they could never watch cricket in San Jose, and all of a sudden Willow TV pops up, and now it's a thing on a global basis. And racing was the same thing for car. Yeah. I mean, everything eventually had a niche. Maybe soccer and some of these international sports always had that. So it's just giving people what they want and what they should get, and it was scarce at one time, and now you can stream anything to anywhere. So I think that's not new. It's just the fact that people now have any device and know how to get to it.
But look at the depth of passion around these niches here. Crunchyroll and Funimation are now the same service.
Oh yeah.
And they both pop up here. YouTube is just a series of small niches, right? This is not one channel.
But what surprises me about Spotify over here is I want to see where that goes next year, because I'm like, why am I paying for Spotify? I love it so much, but we haven't talked about bundling. Mm-hmm. So now I'm in Apple One. So now I have Amazon, I'm already paying for Amazon
Right.
Music, already paying for Apple Music, and yet I still pay for Spotify.
Well, Spotify has your historical playlisting and what your preferences are, and that's also gold.
Well,
User
so but
interface.
look at this now. So to go to bundling, so this is Prime Video plus one other service, Prime Video plus all their services. So this goes towards your point, which is, you know, Disney bundle churns at a much lower rate than any of the three services that are in the Disney bundle. But I actually think, and this slide, I was so happy to see this slide, John, because this goes to a thesis that I've been talking about for a while, which is the lifestyle bundle. We just saw Peloton selling on Amazon. We saw Walmart and Paramount Plus combined, but the Amazon Prime, where I can get my free delivery of my rakes and my Prilosec, and I get discounts at Whole Foods, and I get to watch the boys, and now I'm going to get to watch Thursday Night Football. That's going to be a really hard bundle to break. Apple One, cloud, music, gaming, all rolled into fitness, news, all rolled into one product. Think about the next version of bundles. You know, to me, HBO Max and Peloton, HBO Max and Sirius, HBO Max and, you know, some other vertical that makes them a deeper must have.
I'm waiting for the combination with a hotel group or a travel group.
Right.
Yeah.
Travel
Yeah.
so much, and I would love to.
Or Airbnb or
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you already have travel, for example, like I'm on Lyft and I'm earning Hilton rewards, right? And things like that. So that's starting to happen there.
Yeah.
But
And
the other
imagine if the more ads I watched, the more points I got at.
Oh my God, how great would that be?
So this is, and I want to just dump the slides in a second so we can get to full screen. But this is what's the track here is people are leaving premium services and they're signing up for SaveOdd. They're signing up for a service with ads that's less expensive, which I think is one of the major drivers of that number coming down. Is I'm leaving a Netflix and I'm going to Peacock or I'm going to Paramount Plus with ads. And we're headed back to cable TV. SaveOdd is basically a regurgitation of cable TV, except without the great fundamental economics underneath it. And so, you know, my question is, video is one aspect of this, but gaming is going to be another one. Like when Microsoft ingests Activision, Game Pass is going to become this massive subscription product that there's a Valve out there and there's Epic Game Store, but there aren't a lot of subscription video gaming products out there. And Spotify is running out of subscribers, premium subscribers to grab. They're just slowly flattening that curve. All of the economics we've spent the last decade building, these D2C services that are getting to scale, they seem to be in real trouble. Spotify's never been profitable. Netflix has only had 1 year of positive cash flow in the last decade. You know, on and on and on and on. Where is this all? You know, what is a programmer to do? If you are a content creator, whether it's a creator independently or a service, what should we be thinking of as far as diversifying revenue streams? And I know that you all have ideas because we've talked about this, but I'm going to throw it around the horn here. Darcy, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to go to each one of you. What are we missing that we should be investigating? How do we look at the economics of our content offerings?
You just showed the Prime example, so I'm going to dwell on that. You know, nobody really in this probably world thinks about that. They own Twitch. And if you look at the Twitch experience, I can buy things, I can earn loyalty points, I can gift things to the programmers, I can do everything we're talking about here already is in Twitch. Prime is going to do that same thing to other things, sports related, television related, series, embedding the ability to monetize right in the programming or adjacent to it is very powerful. So I think you're going to see a lot of that type of in programming. I mean, that's what we do. We sell things in our program. Of course, we're inherently native to that, but others not so much. But ultimately, they have sponsors and advertisers who have stuff to sell, and why not be able to buy it while you're experiencing it? And, you know, clicking on the jersey and all that sports stuff and buying things that's been around for a while, but it's actually starting to become real in the game experience. And I just see it spilling over into all the other experiences, lean forward, lean back, because the digital native and the gaming native is, you know, it's 3 billion plus people. So it's just going to come at you. You're not going to have a choice to do it or not.
We've been talking about this kind of like click to buy economic model for a very long time. I mean, I remember hearing it in the 90s, in the aughts, in the teens. Now we're in the 20s, and I'm hearing it again. Dina, do people actually want this? Do people do this? Like are people clicking on shit and buying it in program? They are? Where?
They really are. I think the answer to your question lies with Disney, because they've always been really good at squeezing out any monetization strategy possible. Merch is huge. You have the Disney store. The second thing is that Disney does really well is experiences. So creating like real life experiences around the virtual experience of the content. And so I think for gaming, that's going to be increasingly part of it. You've got esports arenas popping up. You've got people physically coming together to experience gaming, which they're doing, in their bedrooms. So I think the combination of experience and merch has to be part of the strategy. And it's where Netflix is losing out. So when they have Stranger
and
Things,
HBO Max and Paramount Plus, and
people need to go to Target and see the shows on T-shirts, sell the T-shirt for $15. It's just such missed revenue out there that drives me nuts.
Yeah, well, so I guess Darcy brings up a really good point that contradicts my pointed question, which is it is happening. It's happening in Roblox. It's happening in Fortnite. It's happening in Descent. Like people are clicking and buying instantly, but that's because there's zero friction. I click it, I buy it, I have it immediately. I don't have to wait for it. There's no delayed gratification. Mike, do you see? I mean, you work in streaming video in a very interesting audience set, right?
Yeah.
Fail Army, all the Jukin properties, and you've been there for a very long time. You're very old. My question is, do you see any of, because the behavior is there in Fortnite, and also if you look at Roblox is actually the perfect example of a creator economy. It's not, games are being created by users, they're getting paid, and then other people pay them, and Roblox kind of serves as the go-between. Do you see that coming to video? Because there is such deep passion for the brands that you represent. Do you see that kind of, hey, buy this now and it's going to show up at your house in an hour, which we do have, obviously, forgetting the environment for a second, the capability of doing?
I see that happening, yes. But I think there's a deeper foundation to focus on to get to that point. We're talking about media in the form of value, but we have to talk about a proof of value, a POV. The question of that proof of value is going to be who's the audience of that value. So there are different types of values we need to consider. There is the value of taking the time to watch. There's a value of trading time for an advertisement. There's a value to an advertiser to how much they're going to pay for that time of engagement. And there's also the value to that user or viewer or reader or listener up to how much they're going to pay for that content out of their own pocket. And then going deeper into that, how much do they care? How much does that drive to their deeper connection of emotion, to where if they see a designer partner up with somebody in one of our shows, they're going to want that outfit that designer made. It's not always about throwing the logo on the shirt, because in all honesty, I mean, I love a great Disney shirt with with a logo on there, don't get me wrong, but I also, when you think about the fantasy that Disney creates, for example, the princess dresses or the shoes, and then you start seeing designer clothing that's modeled after those dresses or after their shoes or after those outfits that the princes wear. And that drives that emotion and that connection. So there is the fan merchandising, and then there's also the functional, useful merchandising. And that drives to that lifestyle capacity you were talking about. What would be interesting, though, is for us to understand across all of this how to foundationally measure that value from the POV and and not only the proof of value, but the perception of that value. And so you look at, when we were looking at that Crunchyroll slide, I'd love to see the age demo breakout there, because I didn't see PlayStation on there, but I saw Xbox, which I'd assume there might be a younger crowd that's on Xbox, that I'm a guy that's on PlayStation. So,
well, to be fair, that's a subscription. Sony, as far as I know, doesn't have a subscription product yet.
No, they do. PlayStation Plus.
Oh,
Yeah, they do.
So, and you have to be part of PlayStation Plus to access anything online, even though I don't do a lot of like online gaming where I'm talking to people, but I still like to utilize certain multiplayer aspects to an extent. So, but it'd be interesting too, because like maybe the reason Netflix is so high is because it might be an older demographic of more adult capacity. Crunchyroll might be a younger demographic in theory. We don't know, but it'd be interesting to see that. And then you can start measuring against that value to what is the value prop to how much they're willing to pay for a service based on the average income levels of those demographics, or how much an advertiser is willing to pay for that time.
So
I
John, there's
also
a
want to like hop in real quick where big
ahead.
companies like Microsoft need to really learn from their mistakes. Like they bought Mixer to try to compete with Twitch, and that was a fail. So I'm really interested to see where they're going with Activision, to see whether or not they're really going to monetize on that decision, or just
Right.
to their
and then what happens when they buy Netflix? John,
Well,
I know you
let's
wanted to
talk
hop
about
in.
Xander.
Roblox instead, or you know, something.
Well, they've been doing really well with Minecraft, so I do think
Yeah.
that I mean, that's
you're
that is a big monster for them.
And
John,
then
you wanted to.
Twitch was the other thing I was going to throw out there too.
Well, and they tried to buy Discord, which
Yeah.
they dodged a bullet on that one. John, you were going to pop in there, and I do want to ask you a question about this stuff, which is, you see the micro brands getting heavy passion, and you see the macro brands, you know, take Netflix out of it, getting a little less passion, although they still do pretty well on an individual basis when you ask the consumers. Whether it's a must-have, you know, they in the generic question doesn't do so well, but then when you ask about specific services, people are a little bit more passionate. My question is to Mosey's question on in the Q&A. The question was, they ask, you know, do people really prefer to watch ads? Yeah, I think that's not necessarily the correct framing of the question, or the framing of the point, which is it's a value prop.
It's exactly it's a transaction. Like we have one study that we do twice a year that just focuses on ad supported TV, and one of the really interesting things that we found was that when you ask people how much can you tolerate advertising, even the people who describe themselves as the most ad intolerant, when we asked in a later question, if there was a choice between two platforms, one of them's ad free and it costs $4 to $5 a month more than one that you have to watch with ads, even the most ad intolerant people, about a third of them said that they would choose the ad supported version if it saved them $4 to $5. So the thing that people mind about advertising is not the ads themselves, but it's the traditional live TV ad experience where there's really
6
long ad
minutes in a row.
breaks.
Yeah,
There's
right.
a lot of the ads have nothing to do with you.
Mhm.
And that experience has only become more jarring as people compare that to how advertising on every other part of the internet works, which is where the ad loads are pretty small and they're targeted directly to you. So it's probably something that is at least relevant, or maybe even something that you're interested in. So what we found is that in video, as the ad experience improves, it becomes a much more reasonable compromise for people, and especially if there are platforms where they can only watch with ads and they have to there's content that's only available there. The willingness to tolerate a certain number of ads goes up even more, to the point where it's not that people prefer the ads, but there are many scenarios now where the ads are a better fit, and they're a better compromise, more reasonable compromise than the ad-free platforms are.
Best example I can give that I always refer to is, in its heyday, Adult Swim. So here's a commercial linear live feed that was the #1 18 to 34 network pretty much every single night of the week for a very long stretch of the time. Had commercial breaks, but those commercial breaks were awesome.
Mhm.
They were
Well,
rocking.
because a lot of the muck of the advertisers, they didn't want to touch it. So
That
really
is true, but those
where-
advertisers who did go in there catered their ads to the Burger King
Well-
ran different ads on Adult Swim than they ran anywhere else.
to that extent, if you go back and you look at when what was the LGBT network that was on cable?
Wow, it's where RuPaul started.
Logo. Remember Logo,
Logo,
right? The ads that were on Logo, thank you, were very targeted. And because all general advertisers were afraid to touch that. That goes back to the concepts of brand safety versus brands or contextual suitability, which I always like to ask the question of when people want to complain that they saw somebody's ad somewhere. Okay, well, weren't you already there? So why are you complaining you saw an ad there? But that's a whole other conversation. You know,
that's a huge point though. In our ad study, maybe the most interesting thing that we found was that So about every platform that someone says they watch that's ad supported, we asked them a whole bunch of questions about the ad experience, but one of them was, in general, does that provider have more ads than other ones, fewer ads, or about the same? And then we asked another question and we said, how did you feel about the experience of the ads? And in general, as more people say that the platform has more ads than the others, the satisfaction with the experience goes down. One exception was Discovery Plus, which has, Food Network and travel and all those other shows. And people were more likely to say that that platform had more ads than the others, and they got the highest ratings for the ad experience. So, it's they have a little bit of an advantage in that you can come up with ads that really fit the content you're seeing on those channels. But when that happens, the ads become almost part of the entertainment, and it's something that that actually adds to the experience rather than making it worse.
Contextual relevancy creates a much more connected experience, which allows the viewer, reader, user, whatever we want to call this person, to be more connected, more balanced, and then they're more likely to interact. For example, Evan, what you were asking about, are they willing to click to buy something? Well, if they're more engaged because there's a balance, they're more likely to recognize what they're seeing on the screen and act on that requested action. And so it's a matter of us finding that proper balance. Everything in life is about positive, negative. For every positive action, there's an equal opposite reaction, right? So we have to balance
physics now. We're getting into physics now.
Totally.
Come on, Mike.
Who loves Big Bang Theory here, right? Let's talk about that. But
that also,
I want to talk about the contextualization and personalization. I think one of the keys to this is, I think we're all dancing around this, is the more specific the content and the environment is to the person enjoying it, the better that experience is. It doesn't really matter how many ads there are. They're having fun inside the space. But I think one of the key challenges is, dynamic ad insertions to cater to people who want certain products is one thing, but dynamic ad experiences, Darcy, I believe that the technology exists, I could be wrong, for us to basically cater the experience to the user versus the ads, meaning Dina comes in and we know she has a very low tolerance for ads, so we show her fewer ads per hour. John comes in, he's high as a kite, he buys everything, he loves ads. We serve him more ads. Can we do that? I mean, I imagine Amazon, I can't wait to watch Amazon's Thursday Night Football tonight, as someone referenced in the Q&A, because I'm really interested to what they're doing to that product, and they're promising some fancy shit. I know it's going to go down in the middle of the game. But Darcy, is that a thing, especially in live? Can we pump ads, different ad loads to different people? Not just different ads, but different ad loads to different people?
Certainly. I mean, you got to know your customer, and they have to be able to opt in and give you more information for some reason. We have a fantasy bid platform that sits beside our streaming platform. And if you want to win a Dodge Challenger, you're going to give us a lot more information than you normally would just watching programming. So we know what your affinity is to, well, we don't necessarily know you like Dodge yet, but you tell us what cars you like. You tell us what brands, in automotive are important to you. All these check boxes. If you don't check those boxes, you don't get to be in the fantasy bid platform. So those people, absolutely what you're saying, when we can target all day long, especially in streaming.
And isn't that the answer to a lot of these conundrums, is if the experience can be caterable, which is not a food reference. Can't we improve the effectiveness of the ads? Can't we improve the experience itself and keep churn down? Isn't that where we're headed? Isn't that for video?
I'm going to jump into some crazy stuff right now. So we're developing the automotive metaverse, and that is where you're going to jump right into the experience, and it's all branded. And you can sim race in there. You can own a home. You can collect virtual cars and buy NFTs and do all that crazy stuff. So ultimately, that is the extreme, the far extreme of immersive experience and brand engagement is you're in it. Whatever you're actually creating your own experience through this, I hate using the M word because it's way overused, but this immersive experience, this digital twins of what you experience in the real world. And you can surround that person with all kinds of branding opportunities, but they want it because they've already opted in. They're part of this, they're an avatar, they're moving around in our auction differently than somebody is just sitting in front of their television. So that's where we're headed.
Well,
You know,
since
that's very
Darcy-
extreme, but
since
on the other
Darcy
side, I
pulled us-
mentioned, pardon me?
Yeah, since Darcy pulled us into Mark Zuckerberg's neighborhood, the
He
Web3.
doesn't own the metaverse, so
I
we'll
know.
never see.
He thinks he does. The Web3 premise of community and skin in the game of the consumer, forgetting kind of the jingles and jangles of NFTs of the last couple of months, but intellectual property, where we can actually sell fractional pieces of it. Mike has I think that's a Banksy behind him. Banksy released a painting which he sold for $40 million and then fractionalized it.
Yep.
To me, that's the proper use of blockchain smart contracts and Web3. Do we see the Web3 being, and I especially mean this, Dina, in particular, for creators? You know, is there, you know, you look at Patreon as these bespoke subscriptions for podcasters and musicians. Is this kind of, I'm going to sell pieces of my intellectual property to my audience, my most passionate fans? Is that going to be a thing? Do we see an opportunity to monetize differently in Web3 than what has happened in Web2?
Yes, for independent content creators, for sure. And then they're also in charge of generating their own advertising. Someone mentioned thoughts on Discord. Discord is a fantastic community for marketing individual content creator platforms, and then ownership of monetizing without having to deal with any other companies. Basically, individuals as LLCs fractionalizing and monetizing content. It's all about the micro and the meta, and Discord as an enormous community.
Yeah, my thoughts on Discord, to answer Ken's question from a couple of minutes ago, is that it's also become a great way to backdoor steal people's cryptocurrency. So that's my big knock against Discord.
Wow.
So if you think Twitter is accessible, spend a little time on Discord.
Well,
It's
you know,
a-
Evan,
Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing to the personalization of experience. Yes, we need to get there. Infrastructure has to be overhauled, however.
Yeah.
From a broadcast perspective, I'm sure, Dina, you experience this regularly with in your teachings, and as if you're running on a time-based schedule of content and it's a one-to-many broadcast, sure, you can give less ads to somebody, but you still have to fill that time with something. Today we fill it with slates, so we try to fill it with promos, we try to fill, you know, you fill it with various things, but they're still not bringing the person back to the content, especially in like a live sporting program. You can't bring somebody back to the touchdown before the other half sees a touchdown, or else you're going to screw all of those mergers that were that people, or wagers that were bet on. So we have to figure out how can we be time travelers or time shifters in essence, and that's going to get interesting.
Mike, we can always create highlight reels and charge a micro transaction for that. I didn't have time to watch the game. Show me the highlights. Sure.
Right,
You know,
but during the game.
5 cents, or maybe I'll give you $1 to subscribe to your channel.
No, and I
think
agree with that, and that's an individualized experience. But in adjusting the experience in real time stream, that is something different that we have.
And that's to me why Amazon's Thursday Night Football is going to be interesting to watch, because they have so much data.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm logging on to watch Thursday Night Football. They know what I buy. They know when I buy it. They know everything about me, right? They know more about me than my mother does. My mother doesn't really know that much about me. But the key is they're going to be able to adjust in real time. Perhaps they can't change when the game starts up, and although they can. If you've ever been to a live football game, you know the broadcaster's controlling when the game starts up again. But John, isn't that it? When firms like Apple and Amazon and Microsoft get into the live television business, or get into the advertising television business. Amazon's already in the advertising business. Apple's getting into the advertising business. Microsoft is about to be one of the most important ad sales teams on the face of the earth when they sell Netflix's inventory. Isn't this the promise? Like, shouldn't these 3 or 4 platforms, and then add Disney Plus and Hulu to this? Although Hulu's ad experience makes me cringe a little bit.
I'll watch like Warriors games. I'll mention the Warriors because, you know, big fan here.
Yeah, come on.
On Meta. So let's not forget Facebook and VR and the sports experience, and also being able to sell sports games to international fans via the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
Huge
Evan, to your
Philippines, by the way. just saying.
To your question, I think that it's really kind of a triple win. It's a win for everybody. The platforms that have all that data can do the best job of delivering ads to people. The ads will be more effective. They can deliver a better experience because they're showing ads to people that are relevant, that they're going to care about, and presumably the ad load's probably going to be lower because they're more effective. And then the really interesting part is that the viewers actually prefer this. So in one question, we asked people, how do you feel about companies gathering your, private information about you, about your background, about your behavior online? The tolerance for that is low until you say, what if, would you be willing to let companies gather information? And we ask about a whole list of things, from their demographics to their online behavior to what shows they watch, in order to give you an ad experience where you're seeing fewer ads or you're seeing ads that are more relevant to you. And they all say, not all of them, but a really high percentage of them say, yes, I definitely would do that. So Mike, I think you really framed this correctly, where it's a transaction. And as long as both ends of the transaction are set up in a way that people feel like they're getting a good value for their time or for their money, and better yet, give them a choice of which one of those two things they want to spend, that's kind of the best of all worlds. It's better for the advertisers, it's better for the providers, and it's better for the people that are using them.
And
There
does that mean
there was a comment earlier about highlights. So I want to just jump on that because we were talking about monetization. The largest grossing product for ESPN is SportsCenter, and it's just highlights, and that's all they do, and they talk about them. And I will go further. Highlights are moments, and sports moments are the most important thing. And all the camera views you have now and all the different experiences, they're not going to make their way to the linear or even the streaming experience, but it's got value. If there's a important touchdown and a great catch, and you got a 360 camera somewhere that's capturing that, you could you could auction that thing all day long to the fans that want to see it. The blockchain protects it, so it's a unique asset. And it's already happening. So I think we're missing that piece, which is live sports has way more opportunity for this than most things. If you could produce programming, gaming is the same thing. There's different angles of a game. You get the shot in the game or whatever it is, the passing moment in a sim race. And it's from a different camera angle. It's unique, and it can be sold and monetized immediately.
You could say the same thing about, The Voice and Masked Singer. Like, you could put, if you giving people different points of view, coming from the singer's standpoint, from inside the mask versus, the judges, what is that but a sport at the end of the day? So I absolutely agree. I think, though, does this beg a question, or does this lead to the inevitability of some kind of permission-based marketing? Meaning, like, when you decide that you're going to watch a channel, we're going to ask you a series of questions to personalize your experience, but the trade-off is you're going to give us data.
I think that's fair. A couple of things to that point. One is, to your point, Darcy and Dina, on highlights, we love to live in a TLDR, TLDW, or TLDL world, and in that case, there's going to be new hashtags for you.
That list was TL.
Right, exactly. We like things fast. Who doesn't like the microwave meal these days? But to the point of trade-offs, as you were talking about too, John, it is a value exchange. It's upfront selling. Just like I've trained sellers in the past, when you walk into a room, you tell the person that you're pitching to what the price is going to be before you actually pitch them the product, and get their agreed opinion, get them to agree that they're going to listen to what you have to offer, and make sure you're explaining what the benefits and the trade-offs are for that hour-long conversation. Just like with media, people generally will say, and kind of like as people, as somebody in the Q&A was saying, no, are you sure people are going to prefer to watch no ads versus ads? If you just say, hey, would you like an ad free or an ads experience? Someone's going to simply say, I want ad free. But if you say, would you like an ad free experience for $10? Would you like a ads supplemented experience, much lighter than that of cable, for $5? To the point where research shows people are willing to say they'll take $5. And that's been the case for years. We just have to continue asking the question. It's a matter of asking the right question, not just asking the question, but asking the right one.
And I want to answer. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say one thing that leaves out is that I think all of these companies should have offered ad supported or ad free tiers from the beginning, because without that, there's some proportion of the population that either isn't watching you, or they are watching you, but they're making a compromise. They're watching in something that is not the exact way they would like to do it. And people have learned anything since the internet came out, is that they really don't have any need to compromise anymore. There's always somebody out there that's going to do it exactly the way that I want it.
But the unfortunate thing regarding that is we're dealing in a world where it's all about value exchange. And can you measure the value? If we went to a world where we didn't collect data to personalize experiences, the web would be riddled with the dark ages of web. As it looked like, you look 30 years ago, what were all the ads that we saw on the web? And that's why our parents say don't go there. So that's what that is we've forgotten what that is. And if we show that trade-off, humans are logical creatures. If you explain all of the elements,
most of them,
most of them, yes. But in general, from a generalized standpoint, we are logical creatures if you explain all of the elements of the decision to be made.
Well, and I think that's the major difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is in Web 2, the products seemed all free, but you were the product. And we all clicked on the terms and conditions. And, how many people in the audience here have banking apps on their phones? How many of them read the terms and conditions before they downloaded those banking apps? Do they understand that there are firms out there taking your data and anonymizing it, but turning it into great research? Not everybody understands that. When you turn on your Samsung television, they're collecting data, and you probably clicked on the terms and conditions before you read that. I do want to go to a question that Bill had, and I think we're out of time. All the dialogue, the panelists seem to be assuming an opulent world with the current political situation. No, I'm not sure what you mean. Can you continue to say that? I think that the key here is, and the lesson is Netflix in India. Stream globally, act locally. Not just from a content standpoint, from an experience standpoint. Netflix so overpriced themselves in India, they missed the market. They have very few subscribers in India. However, Hotstar is a service that a lot of people, 45 million people, pay for in India. Now, they pay a lot less than they do for Disney Plus in the United States and a lot less than Netflix asks, but that's because one thing, cricket. And this goes to kind of a larger point. This is a cult. Cricket it's as big in India as football or basketball is in the United States, and people are willing to pay for it because there's a value exchange there. But you can't create a model for the entire world and expect it to work everywhere. Dina,
that's totally true. And I'll just jump in really quick with that. If we assume that politics are linked to economics, right? So we have the potential of a recession coming along. Whether or not that's tied to political circumstances is debatable. Coming from San Francisco, I can tell you that a lot of people in my neighborhood are in the 1%. And so those are the folks who can decide that they don't want ads and they're willing to pay for it at any cost. But that says nothing about, the 99% in this country, right? So when we're seeing all this polarization happening in incomes, Netflix should have learned from Disney, which from day one with Hulu, you could have ads or no ads, right? Yep. And now Netflix, all of a sudden, having so much more competition, realizing, oh yeah, maybe we should have,
So let's look at the programming. It's been developed for ads ever since day one. It's had the fade the blacks. It's been ready for it. We've just been waiting for this time.
Right.
The gaming community is 3 billion, and they're in third world countries. They're in less opulent places than the US. It's a global community. I don't see that division or that separation. It's, especially mobile gaming. It definitely isn't in opulent places, believe me.
Well, I'm really eager to find out what this theme's music was. So Eric, do you have the answer for us?
Steve, I completely forgot. I can't believe I forgot what it was. I'm sure Steve's going to tell me in the chat any second right now. Yes, I was James Brown, Jabbo. So if you guessed James Brown, you're right. And I don't think anybody guessed James Brown, which means
there were
we
a lot
can
of guesses and none of them were right.
Yeah. I was thinking it might be Junior Walker. At any rate, that means we give the Amazon gift card to someone else, and we'll give it to Rick Pulido. Rick, watch out for your email next week for information about that. That was an amazing discussion. Thank you so much, everyone. I don't often say, I'll tell a little secret, I don't go back and watch every one of our panels on demand. This one I'm going to go back and watch. That was amazing. So thanks again to all our speakers. Thanks again to Media Silo for sponsoring. For our next session, we're switching things up completely, talking about corporate video and the enterprise with a discussion called Beyond Corporate Communications and Training. And that'll be in about 30 minutes. See y'all then. And thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.